In a world where democracy is often taken for granted, America in 2026 finds itself at a fragile breaking point where the simple act of casting a ballot has become a high-stakes battlefield. Imagine a nation that prides itself as the beacon of liberty, yet millions of its citizens are finding the doors to the polling booth locked by new codes, complex maps, and shifting laws. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once famously said that the denial of the right to vote is the denial of a person's very humanity. He didn't just say these words, he bled for them on the road to Selma and during the 1965 March to Montgomery. Today, as we navigate the aftermath of the 2024 and 2025 elections, his warning rings louder than ever. This isn't just about politics. It is about the fundamental heartbeat of a republic that Dr. King sought to redeem. If the foundation of a democracy is the consent of the governed, what happens when the system itself begins to filter whose consent actually matters? The struggle for the soul of the American ballot did not begin today, but it is reaching a fever pitch in 2026. Following the recent election cycles, a wave of restrictive voting laws has swept through several states, reminiscent of the very literacy tests and poll taxes that Dr. King fought to dismantle with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. From the reduction of mail-in ballot access to the tightening of voter ID requirements, the modern landscape of voting rights is becoming a labyrinth that mimics the barriers of the 1960s. Human rights activists are now invoking the spirit of Dr. King's "Give us the ballot" speech, arguing that we are witnessing a second Jim Crow disguised in technicalities. They argue that democracy is not a spectator sport, and when the rules are rigged to favor the powerful, the silenced majority must follow Dr. King's blueprint for nonviolent mass action movements to reclaim their place in the American story. At the center of this 2026 crisis is the tension between security and accessibility. Proponents of these new laws claim they are protecting the integrity of the vote, yet the data shows a different story, one where marginalized communities, the elderly and the youth, are disproportionately pushed to the sidelines. This is where Dr. King's philosophy of radical democracy becomes essential once again. He understood, as he demonstrated during the Chicago Freedom Movement, that a vote is more than just a piece of paper. It is a shield against injustice and a tool for economic survival. In 2026, the fight for voting rights is inextricably linked to King's Poor People's Campaign, connecting the ballot to healthcare, fair wages, and climate justice. Without the ballot, the people lose their primary weapon to hold the architects of their suffering accountable, making the defense of the franchise the most urgent moral issue of our time. Looking ahead, the question for every American in 2026 is no longer just who to vote for, but how to save the right to vote itself. We are seeing a resurgence of grassroots organizing that honors Dr. King's legacy of strategic civil disobedience. Activists are demanding a federal standard that reflects the original intent of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, a crowning achievement of King's career that has been systematically weakened by court rulings. They are reminding us that democracy is a constant labor, a fragile flame that requires the oxygen of participation to stay lit. As we stand at this crossroads, we must decide if we will be the generation that allowed the light of liberty to flicker out, or the one that, like Dr. King, pulled the arc of history toward a more perfect and inclusive union through relentless advocacy. In this era of 2026, we are also witnessing the rise of a digital voter suppression that Dr. King could have never imagined, where algorithms and misinformation are the new barbed wire fences keeping people from the truth. The battle is no longer just on the bridge in Selma. It is in the palm of our hands and on our screens. When artificial intelligence is used to micro-target fear or to purge voter rolls with surgical precision, the very consent of the governed becomes a manufactured product. This sophisticated high-tech silencing is the new frontier of the civil rights struggle. It demands a movement that is as tech-savvy as it is morally grounded, one that recognizes that a hijacked narrative is just as dangerous as the dogs and fire hoses used against King's marchers. It requires us to apply King's 6 steps of nonviolent social change to the digital world to ensure truth prevails over manipulation. Ultimately, the fight for voting rights in 2026 is a test of whether the American heart still beats for the common man, or if it has surrendered to the special interest. We are standing on the edge of a new moral awakening, where the people are realizing that their silence is the only thing the status quo requires to survive. Dr. King once warned that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And in 2026, nothing matters more than the integrity of our shared voice. This is our moment to prove that the spirit of Selma did not die in Memphis. It shifted into our modern veins. We are the architects of the next great democracy. And as we march toward the next election cycle, we carry the heavy but hopeful responsibility to ensure that King's vision of a beloved community does not perish from the digital earth. The battle for the ballot in 2026 has moved beyond the simple act of pulling a lever. It has become a struggle for the very right to be seen in a society that often prefers to look away. We are seeing a generation that refuses to accept that their zip code should determine the weight of their voice, a sentiment echoed by Dr. King when he challenged the gerrymandering of his own time. King's vision was never about a static victory. It was about an ongoing commitment to an expanding democracy that grows more inclusive with every passing decade. In 2026, when we see youth activists and working-class families standing together to demand federal protections, we are seeing the true face of American resilience. They are the living proof that while a piece of legislation can be gutted, the spirit of a people determined to follow King's path is indestructible. As we look toward the horizon of the next decade, the message of 2026 is clear. Democracy is not a gift handed down from above, but a power seized from below through the same creative tension Dr. King wrote about in his letter from Birmingham jail. It is a social contract that must be renewed by every generation with their own sweat and their own courage. We are currently writing the most critical chapter of the American experiment. A chapter that will tell our grandchildren whether we surrendered to the shadows of voter suppression or if we stepped into the light of a King-style moral awakening. This isn't just about winning an election, it's about winning the future. It's about ensuring that the power of the people remains more than a slogan on a poster. The march doesn't end at the polling place. It begins there, and in 2026, we are marching with the conviction that the best days of our democracy are still ahead of us. If you're inspired by Dr. King's legacy, make sure to like and subscribe to this channel, where I'm dedicated to bringing you the true stories behind the powerful life and journey of Martin Luther King Jr. Don't forget to hit the bell icon and share this video to help keep the dream alive. Thanks for watching.